It's the BBP TV show since 2012, where amazing guests share their digital adventures. Who will we meet today? Small biz influencer, up-and-coming trendsetter, accomplished author? You never know who'll be dropping by. And now, here's your host, Elaine Lindsay, the bionic glamourpreneur with Truel Social Media, who's the second most curious person on the planet.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with my guest, which leads us to the show. My amazing guests share their digital journeys and their offline journeys, and lots of tips, tweaks, and things they learned along the way that can really help you in putting together your puzzle pieces that really makes it a lot shorter road to success when you don't have to do all the offbeat and off-road things and all the little mistakes that others make. So today, I'm really excited to bring you a wonderful author. He is one of the top 14 content marketers online. He's the top 100 digital marketer, top 40 B2B marketer in 2019, and he's the author of the #1 new release, Public Relations in Amazon, Content Performance Culture. This is what we're going to be talking about today. This is Christoph's third book. Actually, it's his fourth book because he wrote a short book as well. But we're going to go ahead and talk about all things to do with content. It's about how you can create the content performance culture you need to drive results in your organization, whatever size that may be. We're going to talk about his philosophy and the tips on how to maximize your content through things like podcasting, videos, live streaming, kind of all of the above. And I want to tell you, Christoph really helps companies share their unique stories more efficiently to reach prospects and retain their existing customers. He's run content marketing campaigns across many, many industries, including healthcare, software as a service, and publishing. And in his career, he's led teams of journalists, content creators, strategists, and designers to successfully drive results. He's a great guy, and I met him a few years ago at Social Media Camp in Victoria, BC. And this is a return visit to the show. So without any further ado, let's get to it so you can meet Christoph.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
It's great. I read your book, Authentic Storytelling, when I first met you at Social Media Camp back in 2017. And it was great. Well, this time I have to tell you, it absolutely blew me away. We're really going to dive deeply into Christoph's book, okay? It is Content Performance Cultures, and I don't think there's a stone you have left unturned, okay? If you follow this book, there is nothing you cannot do with your content. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I'm not just saying it because he's a return guest and I'm thrilled that he's here, but I'm saying it because I read a lot of business books. And, being immersed in the same area that you are, there's a lot out there. I've written features in certain books, and this is really A to Z. You cover all that you need, not just to put out good content, to have an amazing performance culture for your content, but also to understand the why and the what, to put all those pieces together. So I'm going to stop talking because it's definitely time for you to talk. And I mentioned the fact that well, you're saying book 3, but it's actually book 4 because you wrote a little book, I believe, about video. This book. Go ahead.
That is correct. And the reason I don't count that is here's why. Because it was outdated within 2 months.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly why I brought it up. Because that's a big part of why I think this book works. Because a lot of it is really evergreen content. It's the tried and true deep human pieces, including bits of SEO that are really, really important. But they're the tried and true. It's the evergreen stuff that we can do no matter what else changes. We can still, live by these tenets and add all these pieces that are going to make our content really, really perform well and make it not only digestible, but incredibly valuable for our clients and our audience. So this is again, blog to book concept. So go ahead and run with that.
Run with the blog to book. So,
yeah.
So no pressure. Thank you for the introduction. I do appreciate that for sure. The blog to book, basically what that means is you already have blog posts on all topics in the book for the most part. But, it's not just blog posts, right? I rewrote them. I added transitions. In fact, the first chapter, there is a blog post, but then as I was editing things and adding things, I added things into that blog post, into that chapter. So the blog post is a lot shorter than that whole chapter because the chapter has probably, 6 blog posts in it or something like that. And here's really the how you measure that you rewrote enough. Because when you submit it to Amazon, and if you didn't rewrite a lot, Amazon will say, this is not being published because it's violating our terms. This content is freely available on the web. And please explain yourself, basically. That doesn't mean you can't do that, right? You can't actually just do a blog to book, but you have to explain yourself. So I always write back if they say that, are you referring to authenticstorytelling.net, which is the blog? Oh, yes, we are. That's mine. I own the content. Okay, sounds good. And so you just have to do that. And this time they didn't flag it, right? Like the first 3 times I uploaded it. And then one time I changed something and they flagged a little piece of it or something. But that's kind of how you measure it, right? Did you rewrite enough? Yeah. If they say it's too similar, basically, that's kind of good to know.
That's a great point. I knew you would add something really, really useful there, because a lot of people in this day and age, people are self-publishing. It is really the way to go now. There aren't enough of the old style traditional publishers out there. So all of these additional tips that you offer, I think are absolute golden nuggets that people should take and hang on to, because writing a book in your niche is really important to be able to show your expertise.
And so what's interesting about the self-publishing content, so I don't know if you saw Mark Schaefer blogged about this. So he has written 8 books, half with a publisher, half by himself. And so one of the comments he made that some traditional publishing houses, they require you to sell 5,000 copies. And he says, if you can sell 5,000 copies, why wouldn't you just self-publish and make more money? And so I self-publish, hardly anybody cares, honestly. Like I was talking to a reporter yesterday, they didn't care. Oh, it's independently published. They didn't care. Nobody cares. And the other thing is, so it actually went to number 1, right, in the public relations category on Amazon, which is interesting because everybody is now saying they're number 1 best-selling author as soon as they have a book.
Yeah.
And most of them, I would think, are not lying, but you are number 1 in a category. So I was number 1 in the category public relations. And the other thing we have to remember, Amazon updates their list every hour.
Yes.
So if I was number 1 for 1 hour and I saw it, right, they don't send you an email, you have to see it, and I saw it, I was still number one for 1 hour, not
Absolutely.
for 8 weeks, you know? So I of course did an article on that and a podcast on why all of a sudden we're seeing so many number ones. That's why.
Absolutely. No, and that's a really good point. And that's the other piece of this that I think is really critically important, because there are so many books out there that talk about content. And here, do this, be prolific, write your blog post, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
They don't give you any of the key important back end bits. Okay, now that people know what you just gave them, understanding what a number one bestseller in a category means. If you write a book, then you know, between you and I, you have to be proactive when you first get that book out there so that you do catch it if it makes number one, because that will stand you in good stead for ages. But if you don't see it, there's not a lot of ways out there to figure it out. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So let's look at the book in its entirety and start with, okay, your content performance philosophy.
Yep.
And I know that you have, we'll talk about your 5 pillars of the content performance culture, but give us in essence, what is this philosophy, and how long have you been doing this?
Really my whole career, even though at the beginning I didn't know that's what I was doing, right? I was a journalist, and hardly anybody paid attention to if people read it. We just assumed they did, right? 83,000 people read it. That's the subscription number for the newspaper. And we didn't know. But really, I've done that my whole career. And really what it comes down to is, first of all, you have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to be a good storyteller. You have to be willing to play towards your strength. And like back in the day, that didn't used to be a thing, right? If you were not a good writer, you couldn't be a reporter. Today, there's people who make a living on content and they never write. You know, I mean, I write, but I also do podcasts. I do video. I do live audio. I do immersive video. All these different things are now a thing that you can try and you can see in different channels. I'll give you an example. Just as we're talking here an hour ago, I looked on Quora, you know, Quora, where you can answer questions. And I had like 19,000 views on one answer. And I'm like, maybe I should spend more time on Quora. You know, maybe I should answer questions. And my answer wasn't even that insightful. The question was, how can you do a Facebook live stream and an Instagram live stream at the same time? And here's the answer. The way you do it is you have one phone on Instagram and the second phone on Facebook. There's no way to do it from one device. It's like...
Well, there is.
There is?
There is.
Okay. How do you do it?
Okay. It's called StreamYard.
Okay.
And they do up to 5 different platforms for you at once.
So we have to add that to the answer. StreamYard.
Yes.
I'm writing that down. That's why I'm going off screen here.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. They're a brilliant company. It's all cloud-based. It's all SaaS, and young guy that brought it out. Absolutely brilliant. Love it.
So, and you know, this conversation, Elaine, is a fantastic example of how content teams need to work with each other. Yeah. So for example, you know, I'm on the air here saying that's the only way to do it. And what that actually means is that's the only way I know of how to do it. That's what people sometimes forget. I'm not talking for everybody. I'm talking for myself. And then you say, oh, no, StreamYard. I'm like, okay, I got to write that down. 20 years ago, I would have been over here blushing and going, oh, my God, like I got something wrong. But no, the way teams, I mean, kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's not right. It's not wrong necessarily, but it is kind of wrong. But the point is, things change so quickly. Who cares? Like, okay, awesome. Hey, Elaine, thanks for the tip. I'll check them out. And, you know, if I have no idea, if it costs money, too much money to use, guess what? My answer might still be the best answer for some people.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And to that point, okay, and I knew I could tell you, because I know that you believe in collaboration and information. And a lot of what you do and what you talk about is Apple-based. It's iPhone-based. And I am a Google girl, tried and true, forever and ever and ever. So, there's always going to be, different things that you and I can use. You use Alexa, I can't say it because all my machines will go off.
Yep.
The home thing. So adding and learning and getting other pieces when we are collaborative in our genres, I think is the best of all possible worlds.
Yeah, but it's hard for people, and you saw it in the book. I'm talking about collaboration and innovation on all levels, and it's hard because people go into a company and they're like, oh, I'm new here, and then if they have some crazy idea, some people will hold it against them and say, oh, that's a crazy idea. And I'll tell you this about crazy or good ideas. All good ideas have to start as a crazy idea said out loud. And some people might have the benefit that they can say to their spouse at home, so when they get to the office, it's already a good idea. Yeah. But they said a crappy idea somewhere. And so people just need to kind of get over that and say, hey, it's okay. You don't have to be right, or let's build on it. Let's plus it. How do we move it forward? And that's the key in a content performance culture. You have to move forward. I'll tell you this. I don't even run Quora campaigns, and I really will, and I should, and I'm looking at it right now. But I just kind of answer questions when they come into my inbox. Yeah. And I got 20,000 views. I'm like, I need to build on that, right? It wasn't part of my strategy. But if I take that to a committee meeting, some companies, they will have 8 committee meetings to talk about it. And then they will say, oh, why would we need to do Quora now? We're already doing everything else. Blah, blah, blah. We don't have any budget for it. I'm like, just repurpose what you already have,
Yep. And again, that's another golden nugget. Repurpose, repurpose, repurpose. Absolutely. And the fact is, some of your audience is now Quora. And that makes perfect sense. You go where your audience is. And if you develop a new audience on a platform, then it just stands to reason that you would serve them there.
Exactly. And I don't, and all the questions people ask on Quora, I've already answered somewhere else. It's just,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, so back into your philosophy and kind of how to move your content from doing it to making it work for you.
From doing it to making it work. Well, first of all, you do want to start with a strategy, and nobody ever wants to hear this. Nobody ever says, oh, help me with a strategy. So I stopped talking about it. I said, okay, what do we want to do? And then I back into the strategy. Okay, just to clarify, you want to reach this audience. Oh, yeah, I do. And then I verify, okay, do we think that audience actually would pay you money? Yes or no? If the answer is no, who would, right? And you think about who that audience is. And then we think about how to target them. And I'll give you an example. I'm talking to a client, and they're trying to reach what ultimately are PTO members, parent-teacher organization, right, in schools. So how do I target them? I don't know. Do you target around a school that you're trying to target? Do you know what I'm saying? The topics are fine. You can figure them out, but there's no targeting in Facebook that says PTO president, right? For example. So you got to think about, how do you reach them? Who are they? And how can you figure that out? And then you have to start. And that's the biggest thing I think people forget about. You have to start. It doesn't take, it's not overnight success.
Yes.
It takes time. And then you have to reevaluate, right? And you have to, again, when you talk about repurposing, I'll give you an example. I'm talking to this company about organic social. And so I thought I should blog about organic social. What do I have? What do I think about? How do you do it? And it's very different from 10 years ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I found one old article that had basically one whole section of the new article. And the article was written a few years ago, but it was almost there. So I went on the metrics and I looked at how many people had read that article previously, and it was hardly anybody. So I just took the old article, I deleted it, and I reused it. And now I'm saying, it's using some older content, but now I'm republishing it and I pushed it out. It's like a 2,000-word article. There's a podcast, there's a live stream. So my point is, you have to keep things, get them in front of people. And then in reality, as a company, you probably need to spend some dollars for syndication, for ads. If you have a good newsletter, maybe not as much. And now there's new ways to do newsletters, AI, for example. If you're still doing a newsletter by hand, I mean, what an outdated model. But there are people who do that.
Yep. And
then just relentlessly share your content, relentlessly tell stories that your audience might care about. And I'm a journalist, storyteller by heart, by training, but also look at the metrics, look at what's working. So I'll give you an example. Elaine, have you used the term known audience before?
Yes.
I think every marketer in the world uses that term.
Yeah.
And so I was going to write about, right? That's exactly what I said. Yep, absolutely. So everybody uses that term, and I've heard it many times. But on Google, there is 0 searches for known traffic in a month. 0.
Oh my God.
Zip. So if you're trying to rank for known traffic, how to convert people to known traffic, forget about it. Nobody's searching for it.
Yeah.
And so when I wrote about it, I still used the term, but I tried to figure out what are people actually searching for that's similar, right? So people do search for website issues. Why am I not converting leads? How to get more sales from my website, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I focused on those, and I used known traffic in there just in case people would start using it. But it's, again, when you just ask me and you say, well, should we do something on known traffic without me looking it up? I would say, heck yeah, right? Yeah. But the numbers are not agreeing. So use those tools, look at them, see what people are searching for, see what's trending, see what's taking off. Breaking news is still a good thing to hop on when you can, when it makes sense. I've written about Super Bowl related things in the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden I'm ranking for just Super Bowl on its own.
Yeah.
And it's like, not all those people are relevant audience members, but it drives awareness.
Absolutely. Gives you more eyes on. Absolutely. And I think it's pertinent to say, when you're talking about the research and looking into that, quite often as marketers, we get a little caught up in buzzwords like known audience, and those are not the things that the customer will look for. And it always comes as a surprise to clients when you say, yes, we know that's your niche, and those are the pertinent buzzwords for your niche for you. But let's look at what your customers are looking for.
Yep.
Like in healthcare and nutrition, they talk about, the digestive system, and they talk about all kinds of big words. When people are looking that up, they're saying, my child is vomiting. I have diarrhea. My husband can't keep food down. There's none of those buzzwords. It's all very, very basic. I need help,
And, when it comes, you mentioned writing for an audience, right? Knowing your audience. That has probably never been harder. I'll give you an example, especially in B2B. B2B buyers are not singular people anymore. So when you have companies tell you, oh, we're trying to reach the CMO, we're trying to reach the VP because they have the dollars. And that is true. They do have the budget. But I just closed a deal, not even a huge deal, like a deal, right? And I talked to the CMO. I also talked to a specialist, right? That is not executive leadership. And I still had to convince them. And then there were other people, I don't know exactly their titles, but my point is, sure, you have to reach the CMO, but in many, many companies, especially in North America, the CMO goes to everybody else. Yeah. I have a call here coming up with another project. There's 10 people on the phone. Yeah. I can't just reach, so my content needs to be good for really everybody that has some kind of connection to what we're doing.
Absolutely, within the niche. I know I did a project for some webinars with refugee groups.
Yeah.
And of course, there was like 7 groups, which meant there was like 25 people. It wasn't it wasn't a matter of, a couple of people saying, oh, we need this. By the time you get them all in the room, everybody wants something a little different.
Correct.
It's pulling out what it is they really need so that you can serve the majority.
Yep.
So you've always been into the storytelling, and that makes sense, being a journalist first. Okay. But let's talk about your 5 pillars, because I think they just really clarify everything and give people something to kind of aim for.
Yep. So first of all, you have to embrace a content performance culture. And some people say, well, that's kind of weird. You're using the same term again, the first pillar. But it's not, because here's the thing. If I don't want to lose weight, I will not lose weight. So at the very least, I have to want to. That doesn't make me successful yet, but at least I'm bought in. Like, I'm not successful, but I do want to do it. And what that means is you look at the numbers, you look at what's working, you look at what's not working, and you constantly learn and you move forward from it. And it's a daily thing, right? I mean, you have to look at, that's why you see companies now. I was in one the other day. They had a screen up in their office with all their metrics. So you can see it. Every time you go to the bathroom, you can see how things are looking, right? So that's kind of what's needed. You have to embrace it, and it's from the top down. If it's just lip service from the executive suite, it's not going to work. At the end of the day. Go ahead.
I was going to say that kind of the metrics. You get into that kind of later, but I think you've got to start also with the goals and timing. Okay, yep. Timing is a big deal, and that was something I really found great in the book when you talked about, it's about relevance and your timing. Timing in terms of social media. You're saying that, people need to do that every day. Newsletter could be every month. Depending on what you do, podcasts and video-wise, could be once a week, could be once every 2 weeks. It's that the goals, the timing, and I think the really important factor is the consistency.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And you have to get on a schedule, and you have to kind of work out. I'll give you an example. We're in February here. I already have people on my podcast, the Business Storytelling Podcast, well into March, right? So it's like I'm way ahead. The blog isn't quite that far ahead, but usually what I do is I pick a blog. Plus, I don't have to publish every day, honestly.
Yeah.
But I currently do, just because I kind of want to. But you have to get on a schedule, and then you have to stay on it, and you have to set goals. I'll give you an example. We see all these studies that longer content is better, that longer content performs better. So I make it a goal to write longer. The last article was like 2,000 words. Did I repurpose some content? Sure. There's no rule that I can't repurpose content just because I write it new, exactly the same thing. What's the point? So currently my average word count for February is about 960 words, which, isn't bad. And there's a couple in there that are pretty short, so they bump it down. But you want to get on a schedule for sure and stay on that schedule and set a goal. This is how many words. On a podcast, set a goal how far you want to get to. I just recorded chapter 21 earlier, I think, chapter 21 for my content for the book, which has its own podcast channel. And I was at 8 minutes, and I was like, I really want to get to like 10 minutes. So I just found something else to talk about. Now, I didn't just add fluff, in my opinion, but I talked about something else, right? I kind of stretched my thinking. I was like, I want to talk about something else. And so now there's some things in there that are not even in the book. Because here's what I did. It's not a true audio book, so I don't have the coming to you this summer. I'm not a narrator, right? I'm just talking about the chapter. So it's
Yeah.
more like, it's not word for word. I'm just talking. So, and that's kind of, it seems to work. I mean, people are listening to it, hundreds of downloads, so it's not terrible. But yeah, get on a schedule and then, make a point to stay ahead of that schedule.
Yeah, that was exactly the point I wanted you to make. When we're talking about goals here, we're talking about goals for blog posts, for your podcast, for your video. And those goals can be part of that timing. So a podcast, yes, 10 minutes or 15, whatever your aim is, try and always meet that. And your videos as well. If you're going to do a video, I think it's always really smart when you're doing video to give yourself a little blurb bit in the beginning so you can cut it out to repurpose that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then whatever your length is, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you're doing. Then when you have that set up, that right there is part of a strategy.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so you also talk about, and I think we're still kind of in pillar 1 here, but anecdotes. And
yeah.
And what they mean, what is the anecdote to kind of what all you do in that pillar? How are anecdotes, how do they matter?
So we want numbers, we want to measure everything, but anecdotes still matter too, right? So if you have, for example, if 10 people come up to you and they say, I read your content, I love your content, I read your book, whatever, that still matters, right? Even if you don't know where they bought it or whatever, or how they read it, or, the example I give in the book is if you have a doctor who has a blog to drive awareness, and let's say they have a call to click action and they have a tracked phone number, but whoever read it, they didn't click the number, they left, and then they looked up the number later. So now it's not being tracked, right? Yeah. And so, but then they go to the office and the doctor says, how did you end up coming here? And they say, well, I read your blog. Totally matters, right? And if that happens 10 times a day, that totally matters. Now, on the flip side, you don't want to overreact. So for example, I got an email from somebody saying, your pop-up is super annoying. Now this person's, well, I don't know any consumer that doesn't say that, honestly.
Yeah.
But this email came from it was like fake123@gmail.com. And I'm like, I'm not going to even give you any, first of all, not a terrible point. I could push it back a little bit, or I could turn it off for a little bit. But at the end of the day, don't overreact, right? When you have one person tell you something, especially negative. But certainly in clusters, when things happen, make sure you count them.
Well, yeah, if it's starting a trend, then that's a little more important than just a one-of.
Right. Yep. But even trends. Let's think about it this way. So let's say I get 5 emails complaining about my pop-up, but I sold 100 books.
Yeah.
From that pop-up. Why do I care that 5 people didn't like it, or 10 or 20? I'm sorry, I don't. I had 100 people buy the book.
And that's a really good point. You really do have to measure it against what makes sense to you.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important. And the measurement can be difficult, and it can be hard for people to understand exactly for what you said. Having that, the doctor with the click-through, a lot of people may not. They may go look it up after. They may just ask Google when they're out somewhere.
Yeah.
The thing is, something that people have to realize, and as marketers, we think about it, but as business people, you really do need to ask how they found you.
Right.
Or like, why did you come? How did you find me? What did you look for? Because all of that information, all of that research is critical.
Sometimes, but do remember, sometimes it's really hard for people to remember. And it's so easy to forget. I click on, let's say I apply for a job or something, and I literally just clicked over from Indeed. And then they ask me, I'm like, why can't they track that? That's crazy anyways.
Yeah.
But I clicked from Indeed and they say, how did you find us? And I go, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
I already, like, it wasn't even top of mind.
Absolutely. That does make a lot of sense. So pillar 2, you say innovation matters, which makes a great deal of sense to me, because in a way, I think part of what you're saying is don't reinvent the wheel, but keep striving for more or better.
So the point I'm trying to make is innovation by all, that really everybody has a goal to be innovative in their own regards. And, I'll give you an example. We talked about the newsletters earlier, and companies that still manually create newsletters, I don't get it. What a waste of time and waste of money, right? There's so many tools out there that do it automatically. Mm-hmm. Now we have AI, now we have personalization. It really shouldn't be a manual task. You would think that the people who do the newsletters would be the first people to bring that up. Typically they're not, right? Because they think they're going to lose their job or whatever. But what really might happen is if they haven't shown any other value, they might lose their job when somebody else figures it out, right? Because now we don't need them anymore. But if they bring it up and they can say, I could really use that time to do something else, for example, X, Y, and Z, that's innovation, right? And that's looking for new ways, looking for better ways to do things. And anybody can really do that. Now, I know there's some barriers to overcome, if you have a crappy boss and if they might really cut a job because, now we don't need that role anymore. This other thing isn't as necessary, so there is some of those worries, but that's kind of the culture we have to create. Idealistic, sure. But when you talk about, I just talked to Michael Brenner, who wrote Me and People Suck. Yeah. And I said, who disagrees with that comment? Nobody, right? Even the people who are mean. But in reality, there are people that are mean on all levels. And not just boss. He's a little bit picking on the bosses, and sure, they have more power. It's not always the bosses. But be collaborative, right? See how it fits, see how it works. And here's the other thing. When it comes to being worried about your job, it was whatever it is, like the top Fortune 500 or something, most companies last for 15 years. Fortune something, I don't know if it's 500 or 1,000, but last for 15 years. So guess what? So if you're assuming people started in the job, let's just go with age 20, just to do the math simpler. So 35 is one company, right? 50. Yep. That's at least 3 companies.
Oh, yeah.
At least. So don't be so worried about losing a job, right? Because you might have to move on anyways at some point. So, but anybody can be innovative. Anybody can build on ideas. And remember, I talked about the most good ideas start as crappy ideas.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, you can be innovative just by making it better.
Absolutely. And don't even sit on those crappy ideas, because you never know which one's going to be
exactly
that wonderful idea. And within innovation, I know that you dive into all the pieces that you do, like the podcasting and video. Mm-hmm. One thing I thought was really cool about video, you talk about not just using different camera angles, but doing 360 when you're doing a little video. Because as you say, talking heads are boring.
Except today. Except today.
Yeah.
But see, the difference is this is a conversation.
Yes.
Right? Yes. What I'm talking about is when you just have somebody on camera and they talk, and they not only do they usually talk, but they have a script. They read a script. And I'm like, Elaine, instead of us talking about it, why don't I just read the next chapter to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do I need, why? What a waste of time. So be conversational, right? When you're on camera, don't overthink it. Sound like a human, shouldn't be too difficult. We're all humans. And 360 is a fantastic way. It's so cheap to do today. The easiest way probably to do it is to buy one of those cameras. They're like under $100. You put them on your phone. You can literally live stream in 360 walking around.
Yeah.
probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
Because then it goes straight on YouTube and it's already on there. So you don't even have to edit. If you don't want to be in the video, you can put a tripod in the middle of the room, shoot a picture, shoot video, add voiceover. I mean, you can be pretty fancy with that as well. Some people will tell me, hey, not that many people have headsets today, right? The virtual headsets.
Yeah.
I have one, hardly ever use it. But so it's a little early on, but even if you don't have a headset on, you can still watch it just by scrolling around with your finger without a headset on.
Yeah.
So it's still kind of cool, but it has to be a story that is visual, right? And so the one that I did last year, I took part, the sheriff's office, they did a active shooter training at the office, right? So I literally held the camera as the sheriff's deputy, who was the bad guy, came in and was taking shots at us, right? Not real bullets, of course. But so that's on camera, right? So you can watch it. And, people watched it because it's white. You see the faces and you can turn around and see the shooter. But definitely try those kind of videos when it makes sense.
It also, ups the interest and keeps people more engaged.
Exactly. Yep.
And one thing that I find is when you're talking, you said it, be conversational, don't lecture.
Right.
Yeah.
People do that.
Yeah. And it's not good. It's not good. So now we come to, the Super Bowl piece. Pillar number 3, next play mentality.
So, that definitely came from my days as a football player, honestly. Yeah. But what do football players do, or really any athlete? They run a play. Something good happens, something bad happens. Doesn't make any difference what happens. They most likely have to run another play. So run the next play. I still see companies like something bad happens at 8:30, and they're still running around the office talking about it at 3:30. And what has been done in the meantime? Nothing. They didn't run another play. So make sure, it's okay to vent for a minute. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to be tired. All those things are fine, but run the next play, right? So how many plays should you run in a workday? I don't know. A football game has 80 plays, but think about that. If you only run one play and the one at 8:30 ruined the rest of the day, not a good setup. So next play mentality is kind of a new thing, I think, for people that are not in sports, right? That didn't grow up that way. And they're like, that's kind of what they do. They fret on it all day. And Yeah.
And it's, I have a friend who is a mindset and visualization coach for figure skaters.
Yeah.
And so it's important for them to concentrate on what they're going to do, not on what they did or didn't do correctly.
Right. Yeah.
So totally get that next play.
But it's not as common.
No. And I come from a figure skating background, so I totally understood that. My son was a football player, so. Okay, so pillar 4, and this, I think this is kind of a much bigger chapter, a bigger area, if you will. Right players in the right seats. There are so many facets to this.
Well, so first of all, let's be clear. Having a team is kind of like being married, right? Yeah. And yes, my wife is perfect. There's no flaws or anything. But in general, marriage is about what will you put up with, right? Like, what are the flaws you will put up with? So when I see these job descriptions that come across my desk, and I didn't make this up, somebody was seriously looking for content marketing unicorn. And I'm thinking, I'm like, first of all, who wants that in their title? Second of all, are you going to pay him like a pony or really like a unicorn? You know what I'm saying? So, but at the end of the day, you need the right mix of people who can help you reach your goals. And don't expect them to be perfect. People are people. Like sometimes old school managers typically say, well, they need to check their personal life at the door. That's not how it works. Right? And doesn't mean you have to become a counselor either, and you do want performance, right? and people need to be open to actually being a part of it.
Yeah.
Work together. And then you have to have the right players and the right roles. I mean, there's teams I see, they don't even have the right jobs, like you need somebody who creates content, whatever that might look like. They probably need to be able to write, whatever that might look like. You probably need somebody who is a digital analyst, who can look at the numbers, who can explain them, who can make sense of them. And that is actually easier said than done, right? I mean, now with Google Analytics, I mean, I don't think there's a chapter in the book, but I just did a podcast on it. With bots, you have to filter out bots, right? Like that doesn't happen automatically. I don't know why. Google might change that at some point, but today it's not. So who's going to do that? An analyst. Then you need content syndication strategists, right? So those are the people who get it in front of people. Hopefully they don't create the newsletter from scratch, but they still have to oversee it. They still have to write some things. They still have to test some things. And of course, you can break those up. So the bigger the team is, content creation could be writers, video editors, podcast producers, blah, 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 right? Or it could be one person doing all three. Syndication strategists could be email marketing specialists, social media strategists, all those different things. But you definitely have to have a good mix of the right people that complement each other and also complement each other when it matters. And what that means is, point out what's working well, how somebody did something good. If nobody ever does that, either there's just a problem on the team or nobody does anything good, which hardly ever happens. There's always something good that happens. So make sure you have a good mix of the right people.
And don't forget optimization.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's always my thing. Okay, so pillar 5. So in your 5 pillars, we've come to, which to me is more kind of the nitty gritty, the ongoing evaluation. Give us kind of what does that include?
Well, it used to be that everything was do a strategy and then set it and forget it, right? You do 5-year planning and then that's it. You don't do anything else. But here what you have to do is all the time evaluate what's working. Why is it not working? What's my goal? How can I get there? What else can I try? Right? So like even the example with Core, I mean, it's just me, so I don't have to have a committee meeting. But, same rules apply for anybody. I mean, if a company sees a result all of a sudden, just change your tactic a little bit and, see if you can maximize it or exploit it or whatever term you want to use. But you constantly have to look at what's working and what's not working and why are things working and why they're not working. Another example, there's so many things out of our control today that you have to do this and always have to push forward. I'll give you, so Google organic traffic has been cut in half for many, many sites. The sites didn't do anything wrong, right? So whether you say, oh my goodness, we did you didn't, nothing. So I was talking to somebody the other day and they said, oh, we want to grow our organic traffic from 3,000 to 6,000. And I'm like, but has it already gone down to 1,500?
Yeah.
They didn't know, right? So a goal would be to get back to 3,000.
Yeah.
So things change all the time. And that's hard for people to wrap their head around because it didn't used to be that way, right? Like it used to be, we had control as the company of everything, right? We did everything in-house. The server was in-house. How we got it to people was in-house. Everything is in-house. But today, everybody is dependent on Google. Everybody is dependent on social media. Everybody is dependent on other things. Email. I mean, even if you think about email, you own your email list. And just because you own it, and let's say your provider blacklists you or something, guess what, right? I mean, hopefully it doesn't happen, but let's say it happens. Or you did something they didn't like, and now they're saying you're suspended, right? Or whatever. Or let's say the company has another issue that has nothing to do with you. There's all kinds of things that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that, it's funny, it speaks to, I've developed this little term, it's P2P, and that's not people to people. This is in terms of your ongoing evaluation. You always have to be prepared to pivot.
Yep.
Because changes so fast now. And, you know, things can change on a dime. Take, for instance, Twitter. There were a bunch of different companies that allowed you to follow and unfollow, and they showed you what were fake accounts. And you know, in the space of one day, Twitter annihilated all those companies.
Right.
And only 2 companies were able to pivot and still be viable.
Yeah.
So so not being, you know, not evaluating on a basically, you know, day to day or week to week at the least attitude can get you kind of caught with your pants down. And, you know, it's sad. They were good companies, but it happens. You know, how many video programs have come up and gone? Look at Blab and Vine and Meerkat was the other. I'm thinking it's the little animal. Yeah, Meerkat. All of them, you know, came and went because I don't think they were prepared to pivot in any way when change arrived, which is, you know, really unfortunate. So, God, I could talk to you all day long, just so you know that. And I know our audience is finding everything that you say really, really useful. So, what I want to sort of sum up within your book, which, just so you know, Christoph's podcast that discusses the book chapter by chapter is really interesting, not just for the extra stuff you put in, but because you kind of are able to digest what you've read in the book a little more when you listen to the podcast. And I really like that synergy. You know, there's no sameness. It actually gives me more to think about, which is great. One of the things that I think is really important, we talked about podcasting and video and what have you, but what about this become an expert, okay, or what people are calling influencers? Give us the quick lowdown, sort of 3 or 4 things that it needs for you to do that within your niche.
Yeah. So first of all, you need to decide that you want to become the expert. And there are some people who say, oh, I don't want to be an expert. But it is very helpful. So like, for example, I list those things all over the place. Top 14 content marketer, top 100 digital marketer, top 40 B2B marketer. I think those might be the main ones. And, you know, like, so you have to figure out what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And how are those lists compiled, right? So for example, a lot of times they're compiled on Twitter. A lot of times they're compiled around conferences. So let's say you never go to conferences. Maybe that's not the way to do it. But I go to content marketing where last year I was listed as a top influencer. But basically what happens is they measure how much you talk about the topic at hand. So if you never talk about content marketing, you can't be listed as an expert in content marketing. And I kind of made fun. It was actually Chris Penn who put it together. And I kind of said, you know, Chris Penn determines his research that I talk a lot about content marketing. I didn't need you to tell me that, right? I mean, we all know that. But they talked about the engagement, what are people doing with it, and all those different things. So you have to talk about the topic.
Yes.
The end. I mean, you have to. And you have to use the right hashtags. Hashtags are becoming less and less popular, honestly. When you looked up the Super Bowl ads, for example, you could search for Super Bowl ads without the hashtag and you could get all the same results. So it's less and less important unless you do a Twitter chat, but use the right hashtag. So like I was ranking in digital marketing. I'm like, oh, I really need to rank in content marketing. I want to rank in digital marketing. So I just started using more of the digital marketing hashtag and ta-da, now I'm in the top 100, which some people might say that's not very high, but there's hundreds of thousands of digital marketers out there. And then you can basically, you know, you list those things and they're just like any other award. But it does help, right? People look at that, people pay attention. And, you know, and the other thing is you are still sharing valuable content for your audience. So it does fit, right? So don't be so shy about it. If you don't like calling yourself an expert, just don't use the term. Honestly, at some point, if you do it well, somebody else will call you an expert, and that's really what matters. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so And you also talk about connecting with the right people.
Yeah, definitely connect with the right people, connect with other experts, connect with your target audience. One way, which is actually not in the book, but I just read about again yesterday in an old blog post, one way to find your target audience on Twitter, especially if early on, is go to your competitor's Twitter account and follow the people that follow them.
Yeah.
And then many of them will follow you back, right? So that's an easy way to connect with some of your target audience members.
Absolutely. And a really good thing too is to make a list of the influencers in your niche that you admire and follow, because they can see that. And they will, some influencers, if you put out good content, they are going to reshare your content too.
Yeah. And I do share other people's content. As you know, the one thing to keep in mind as a brand, when you reach out to people, like if you connect with me and immediately you say, hey, I thought you liked this piece of content, if you want to take a look and feel free to share it. Well, no kidding. I can share it. I don't give permission. So it's their PR arm, right? And so what I usually do is I send them back a PayPal link and say, I'm happy to share it. Here's the cost. Because so if it comes to me, right, they have a reason to do that. They don't do it just because they like it. They want to share it with me. They want me to share it for them so they can pay. If I find it myself, and I actually did, and it wasn't just a scheme that I looked behind, I might share it. I might add it into the queue. The other way to get influencers to participate with you, interview them. So for example, Elaine, I will share this show. I will. I'll put it in the queue, right? I'll say, here, I was on the show, listening, blah, 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 right? So when people participate, like the interview I did recently with this magazine, I'll share that article when it comes out, right? I even have a media page on my blog that I link to all the different things that I'm quoted in or whatever. So involve influencers, right? Get their quote. I'm not a fan of roundups that are just question and answers, but if you write an article and throw in quotes, I think that's a fantastic strategy.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, roundups, not so much. There was a time when you could do, groups and answering the same question, but that's kind of gone by the wayside as well.
Yeah.
And wow. Okay, our time has flown. What I want to be sure that everyone knows, we will have the links to not only your website, authenticstorytelling.net, but we will also have links to the podcast, and it's available on Anchor and Spotify and everything.
Apple, Stitcher, Breaker.
So
blah, blah, blah.
everybody's good. Yeah, the Google girl and Apple, of course. But it's all out there for you. Christoph has just an absolute wealth of knowledge in content marketing, and it really behooves you to get the book so that you can up your game, whatever your niche is, however big or small you are. I think it's really, really useful. And that's coming from the heart, because I don't promote everybody's books, just so you know. Having said that, I think it's really important to build relationships with people long before you ask people for something. If you build a relationship with somebody and then down the road, we can interact with each other and say, hey, I've got another book coming out, do you want to do another show? Or I have, people that come to me because we've been doing this for years. So you and I both know how well it works. What I want to ask you to do is share with the audience something that you use, some little tip or trick that you use daily in either your business or personal life that really helps you.
That really helps me, like professionally.
Well, it could be professional, could be personal, some little, tweak, tip, hack, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I got it. All right. So what's hard is to find enough time for content creation. And one of the biggest things that hurts our time is indeed email. Email is terrible. So here's what I do with email. I get email all day long. I only send email twice a day. And here's how I do it. It's automated, right? So if I need to reply, so if I get an email at 6 in the morning, I see it, I have time to reply. I will schedule it to send at 8 a.m. If it's like 7:10, I can't schedule in the 8 o'clock slot anymore, right? Because it's too close. It now goes to the 1 p.m. slot. So basically, I only email twice a day. So if you email me at 2 in the afternoon, and it's not urgent, like let's say we go on a show at 3, I will reply, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
But if it's just like you saying, when can you come on the show? I will not reply that day. I will schedule it for 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you can deal with it then, and I can deal with it then. And what that has done for me is basically what most people do, they email as soon as they get emails.
Yeah.
So I get a big chunk of emails like between 8 and 8:30. I get a big chunk of emails between 1 and 1:30. And then I reply, and they go in the next batch, and it has freed up all the time in between because there's no emails.
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, there's some, but not as many.
No, that's actually brilliant. Okay, it's not just about when you look at it, but scheduling the replies. That's absolutely brilliant. What a great tip to leave the audience with, and me too. That's actually really, really good. I have to say thank you ever so much, and I look forward to your next book.
Give it some time. Thank you so
no
much.
pressure there. No pressure.
No
okay?
pressure.
But no, thank you so much. This has been Christoph Trappe, and his site is authenticstorytelling.net. And remember, podcast, there's video, there's all of the above, and all those links are on the BBP Show page for Christoph's show. Look forward to seeing you all next time. My next guest is, I believe, Ted Rubin. Until then,
Very nice.
Make your day amazing, and we'll see you next time.